Hi there, in this video we're going to look at exporting our Illustrator files, getting it ready for print or maybe digital distribution. So maybe looking at emailing it as a PDF or having it downloaded from our website. We're going to wrap that up into this course. Specifically web export we'll look in the next video, so jump to that one if you want to. All right, let's get started. Okay, you can have any document open, but in your exercise files, I've got exporting print open. Okay, and there's two things we need to quickly check before we create our PDF, which is going to be our probably most useful exporting file format. And we need to check both the color mode and the raster settings. Basically, color mode is RGB versus CMYK. We went through this in proper detail in an earlier video, so check that one out. But let's say I'm going to a local print shop, okay, the one on the corner, and they're going to run me off 100 copies or 1,000 copies. It's best to send them in RGB, okay, so be working from the beginning in RGB. You can switch it later on here, but RGB is going to give you a better result, just does from those kind of smaller print shops. Now, if you're working in a big kind of offset printing, they typically call it, okay, so it's a big printing, they're going to print you 10,000, they're probably going to want CMYK. Okay, but have a look at that video earlier on, but this is where you can go and change it. The next thing to double check is under Effects and Document Raster Settings. In previous tutorials, I said, hey, lower the resolution, okay, in here because it makes your computer run a whole lot faster while you're working. The cool thing about it being in Illustrator is you can yank it back up to 300, like super high quality. Doesn't matter that your machine's going to run a little slowly now because we're at the final hurdle. So just make sure it's up at 300, click OK, and then we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Save As. All right, so in here, what we need to do is I'm going to put it on my desktop. I'm going to put it in Illustrator files, and down here where it says Format, I'll lift it up, we're going to use Adobe PDF. Okay, let's click Save. There's basically two things you need to do. You need to drop this down and say, I'd like to use high quality print. Okay, that's just a really good default. Okay, you're not going to run into any problems with that one. The other thing is to turn this off. Okay, this on basically means that the PDF you're making is basically a full working Illustrator file. And we don't need that to go to the printer. Okay, we've got an Illustrator file already. The biggest problem with it is that the file size can become huge with this left on. So if you do find yours are really big file sizes, PDFs, you know, and you're like, typically these should be smaller, it's because this has been left on. It'll say this preset up here has been modified. It's because we untick this, and then we just click on Save PDF. It warns you, you've turned that thing off. Don't worry, it's okay. All right, you wait for the PDF to be produced, and hopefully now on my desktop, where are you desktop? In my files, there's this print file. It's quite small, okay, is 0.5 MB, and yeah, that one is ready to go to print. And because it's RGB, that one there can be downloaded from the net as well, okay? So my file size is really small. If you're doing if your document's a lot bigger and you do need it to be smaller for a website or an email, you can do some slight adjustments. Let's do another Save As. And I'm going to call this one low res. Okay, so it's going to be smaller. It's not going to look bad. Okay, but what we're going to do is go into, you can start with high quality. Okay, that's for print. Okay, but we can go to this one called smallest quality. Okay, and that's, smallest file size. And that's going to be a good one for web. Okay, and that's all you need to do. This one by default has that turned off. Okay, and we're ready to go. This one's probably not going to be much smaller. Okay, because it is just really small to start with. Let's have a little look. Our low res one is significantly smaller. Okay, it's about 1/4 of the size, and that's a whole lot more important when you've got a file that's maybe say 20 MB. Okay, 1/4 of the size would be awesome. So yeah, those how to go to a commercial printer. Okay, and this one how to go to maybe a website version or an email version. One last thing you might do is, say you're not exporting for, I'm going to close that down. I'm going to open up the original AI file. Okay. And what we want to do is, say we want to send this off to somebody else to work on. You can do, or you've got a colleague and they want to work on the Illustrator file, or you want to archive this. Okay. What you can do is you can go to File and something called Package. Package, what it's going to do is it's going to copy any links, so any images that you've linked in here. It's going to copy any fonts used, except for Typekit. They protect those ones. But let's say you're using your company font and you need to send it to someone and they don't have the font. It's going to go in there. And where am I going to stick it? I'm going to stick it on my desktop. I'm going to stick it in my Illustrator class files. That'll be good. Okay, and it's going to go into this folder. Okay, am I going to call it folder? Yeah, why not? Click package. And it says, be careful, fonts are going to be copied in here. Make sure by law you're allowed to use them. Yes, sir. I'm going to go OK. It's done. Let's have a little look in our folder. It's created this folder, and the cool thing about it is that it's put in my AI file, any fonts that are being used in it, okay, Gaudi old style, and any links. Okay, there's my desk image. So the cool thing about that is I can now zip that up and say compress. If you're on a PC, you right click and say, I think it's send to zip, and you'll get a zip file. I can email it to someone or back it up or put it on a disk. And it's just a good way of making sure I send the AI file, but also includes the images, also includes the fonts. Yeah, so it's ready to go. All right, that is getting exporting from Adobe Illustrator to PDF. Let's get into the next one where we look at more web-based exports. All right, see you over there. All right, in this video, we're going to look at exporting Illustrator files for web. Okay, we're going to look at JPEGs and PNGs, doing full artboards and little individual things as well. All right, let's get started. First up, we've got a file open called Exporting Web AI, which is in your exercise files. We want to do two things, right? I've got this kind of artboard over here. So I've got two artboards. I'm going to click on my artboard tool. There's 1 and 2. So we're looking at two kind of versions of exporting. This one, I just want a big JPEG. Okay, I just want a JPEG that I can email or stick up on a website. And this one here, I want to export the individual pieces. So let's do this first one. Okay, there are two different techniques. So we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Export, and we're going to go to this one that says Export As. Okay, Export As allows us to, down the bottom, okay, let's move it up a little bit. I'm going to put it in my desktop, my Illustrator files, and in here, I can pick a format. Okay, so PNG, JPEG is probably the best for this particular image because there's no transparency. Okay, it's just a nice flat rectangle, lots of colors. JPEG is perfect. I'm going to say use artboards. Without that, it just exports everything that you can see, which you might like. But I'm going to say use artboards. I'm going to say just the range of 1. Okay, just the first one. Click export. Now in an option here, okay, you can decide on the quality. Now have a look. Like you want to be around the 10 to 8 mark. Okay, but just look at the file size at the end. If it's huge, you're like, oh man, I'm going to have to lower it down. And it's just a balancing act of file size versus the quality. Somewhere down here, it's going to look pretty bad. Okay, so my advice is around about 8. Gives you kind of a nice balance between the two. Now, when it comes to resolution, this is also another balancing act. If it's going to print, which we're not trying to do here, it should be 300. If it's going to a traditional kind of screen or website, 72 will work. Okay, because screens are changing quite a bit, there's high res and retina and high DPI, there's some other things, you might kind of cut the middle and go 150. That's what I would typically do. Okay, so have a little look, see what you've got as a result. Okay, every usage is a little bit different. Click OK, kick back, relax, it'll make you a JPEG. So let's have a little look. And in my desktop, where are you? Desktop files, and where's my web? Okay, it's called it Web 01. Okay, and yeah, looks good. It's fine size. It's a really small file size. Okay, so that works for that. These guys are a different story. If I use that same method, I'll get this whole artboard, okay, and all of these guys together. I want them as separate icons, okay? I might have designed them for a website or for an iPhone app, okay, and I want them all to be separate. And what we do is we open up something called the window and we go to the assets export. This is really handy. Okay, I'm gonna move it over here. So what I'd like to do is, watch this, if I drag the owl in, there he is there. He's kind of like his own little individual asset. I can click on him, call him owl. Okay, same with the crown, easy peasy. Call him crown. Get the idea here. We're gonna run into a problem in a second. I'll show you what it is. Alien. Can't spell alien. Okay, it's this guy here. I'm gonna say all of you guys. I'm gonna drag them in, and whoa, we get kind of 4 parts. Okay, so I'm gonna undo that. And what happens is if they're not grouped, they assume that they're all separate objects. Okay, so this guy here is getting dragged in, and because they're not grouped, it's kind of exporting an eye, and that's the kind of middle bit of this like hood, and everything's separate. So you get the idea. So with them selected, we're going to go over here and go to group. Now if I drag him in, he's now just one old ninja. Cool. Now with them all selected, actually with them selected in here, okay, you can see it's blue. Click on him, blue, blue, blue. Okay, so now I was selecting lots of them by holding down the shift key. Okay, they all go blue. So click on the first one, hold shift, click the last one, they're all selected, and I can decide what kind of format. Now you can export these as PDFs here, which is cool. But in our case, like a JPEG won't work for us because a JPEG will put in a background. We want a transparent background. Okay, so we're gonna go to PNG or SVG. SVG is kind of new, so talk to your web designer or app developer if they want SVGs. It's getting more and more popular, okay, but PNG is probably the most typical. Okay, so, but you might decide, actually, I'm not sure. I'm going to send them both. Click on this thing that says add scale. And instead of scale, we're going to say, actually, I just want an SVG as well. So you're going to export 2 versions. Let's click export. Okay, it's going to ask you where you want it. I'm going to stick it on my desktop, Illustrator class files. I'm going to make a folder in here called web export. And click choose. And off it goes. Let's see what we've got. So in Finder, web export, cool. So let's go to icons. I've got 2 aliens. One's a PNG, one's an SVG. You might also want a JPEG. Say you're not sure, just put them all in there. Okay, I've got a crown. Okay, I've got my ninja and I've got my owl. Okay, so the naming came through from the asset panel and you can decide on what kinds of formats you want. All right, that is exporting for web from Adobe Illustrator. All right, I will see you in the next video.